That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we're ready to get started here. Welcome everyone to the November 26th Recreation Commission meeting. We'll begin by acknowledging that the lands on which we gather are the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. Our first item today is a delegation. We have a late delegation request, so we do. Thank you. Moved by Grieve, seconded by Hillian. Anyone opposed to the motion? Seeing none, I will invite Susie Saunders, our Director of Recreation and Culture and Community Service from the City of Courtenay, to present. Welcome. And Chris Davidson from Engineering. Oh, I got to turn you on.
Great, thank you. And thank you for allowing the late request. Really appreciate it. So I'm Susie Saunders. I'm the Director of Recreation, Culture and Community Services with the City of Courtenay. Chris Davidson is the Director of Infrastructure and Environmental Engineering Services with the City of Courtenay. And we also have Kathy Collins, our Recreation Program Manager, here if there's any questions that we can't answer. So we're here just to provide a little bit more information on the City of Courtenay's recreation grant requests for 2025. We've submitted our annual requests as usual, but there are sort of two significant items that CVRD staff also wanted us to speak just a little bit further to. So specifically, we've asked for an increase of $41,900 to support child and youth adapted and inclusion programs through Courtenay Recreation. And also wanted to provide you a status update on the Courtenay and District Memorial Pool and information on our capital requests for detailed design for 2025. So I'll start with adapted programming. Courtenay Recreation offers year-round adult-oriented adapted and inclusion programs. And then we also offer significant summer inclusion programs for children and youth. And I just want to make a note. It says MCFD and then Pacific Therapy, sorry, it's not Pathways, provide limited funding for one-to-one support. Courtenay Recreation, through funding from the regional district, as well as City of Courtenay funding, provides leisure buddies that ensure supportive environments for children with additional needs. But without dedicated support. So this is where we add additional staff to programming to make sure that we can include all children. We don't provide this service during the year, and we experience significant demand for services year-round for children and youth, and it's not something that the City of Courtenay currently offers. We do offer, you can see on the side there, we provided support for 57 summer inclusion participants. We were not able to meet 13 requests during the summer. And we were also not able for leisure buddies and not able to meet 5 inclusion requests during the summer. That's for folks, kids who are funded through MCFD or Pacific Therapy. So the regional district recreation grants currently provide us about $100,000 a year towards the adapted and inclusive programming at the City of Courtenay, and that supports the year-round adult programming as well as the summer inclusion. The request of $41,900 is in order to increase leisure buddy support in the summer as well as spring break and winter break programs. It'll offer 2 to 3 more spaces per camp. And then also a request for additional funding to offer year-round adapted and inclusive recreation programming for children and youth. And so this would allow for 2 to 3 programs per week to have additional support for children with additional needs. Without this funding, we will continue to not be able to provide support during our year-round recreation programs. We are in conversation with our colleagues at Comox and Cumberland. So Comox and us are working together on trying to expand the availability of summer programs for children who have direct support from MCFD or Pacific Therapy. And we're working with Cumberland to see if we can support them on building a similar leisure buddy program, although at a much smaller scale. So that's an overview of our adapted programs requests. And of course, we can answer questions at the end if they come up. The other update we wanted to provide was around the Courtney and District Memorial Outdoor Pool. We were here this time last year, providing an update on the pool. And so we wanted to just give a little bit more information as well as background on our capital request for this year. So I won't go over the history too much because I'm sure you're all familiar with it, but it is one of the oldest pools of its kind, opened in 1949. So we just had our 75th anniversary this summer. Yep, I think that covers that part. So our financial request for this year, it is comprised of a couple of components. Our operating request is for 134,000. That's an increase of just about 24,000, and that's due to wages and benefits. The City of Courtney Council has directed us to ensure that we're abiding by living wage in our wages and benefits, and so that increase is due to that. And then the capital request is a total of $350,000. 250,000 of that is funding for detailed design, which will follow our options analysis. And then we have our annual capital repair requests of 60,000 and VHA required repairs of 40,000. Our typical request for capital funding from the recreation grants for the pool is in the range of 80 to 100,000. It's been that over the past few years. So the significant request here is the 250,000 to support detailed design in 2025. And you'll notice there's also a 2026 placeholder capital request of 1.25 million. That's the estimated costs of repairs for the outdoor pool. What actually happens in 2026 will follow a report back to council on the results of the options analysis and council providing direction to staff on which option to pursue. That options analysis, and Chris can speak to it a little bit more, is looking at the cost benefit of repairing the pool, if that's possible, and what it would take and how long it would extend its life as compared to, for instance, building a new pool at that location. And so the 2026 amount is a placeholder based on a repair option. A bit of context just on the outdoor pool itself. The city provided free public admission in celebration of its 75th anniversary. We saw over 15,000 admissions, which is a 51% growth over the summer before. Over 800 children, and mostly children and youth, in adult swim lessons, over 1,500 kids just through school rentals. And we're seeing on average of those participating at the pool, between 40 and 45% are Courtney residents, and 55 to 60% of people accessing the outdoor pool come from non-Courtney addresses, Comox, Cumberland, and electoral areas, and of course a little bit beyond. So I think it's an important piece of context for the regional district in its consideration is that we're seeing over half of the participants are coming from outside of the city of Courtney. The strategic direction related to the pool, the Courtney Parks and Rec Master Plan directed the city to look at the future of the pool. In 2023, the Recreation Commission provided direction to CVRD staff to work with the city on confirming the long-term plans for the pool, as well as formalizing facility support agreements. In discussions with staff, we sort of paused the work on that until we had further understanding on the future of the pool. And so I think once the options analysis comes back, that will be a good time to re-engage on what the future funding for that facility looks like. And in January of this year, Courtney Council directed staff to proceed with immediate repairs, which we did in the summer, and an options analysis for the future of the pool at its current location. I provided this information last year, but it just provides a summary of what we heard when the city of Courtney went to the public around the future of the outdoor pool. Here you can see that about half of the respondents were from the city of Courtney and the other half were from areas outside of Courtney. We had over 1,800 responses, and there was strong support for the pool to remain at its current location and was seen as a community asset. To note, over a third of respondents hadn't actually used the pool in 2023 or 2022, and yet still agreed that it was an important community asset and that the city should continue to invest in it. The city provided 5 options for the public to reflect on for the future of the pool. And I guess the key themes and takeaways is that there was very little support for closing the pool, which was one of the options presented. And the vast majority, or not the vast majority, I should say, the majority of respondents, so over 50%, supported the pool staying at its current location, either through repairs or through renewal. The second least preferred option was actually co-locating it at the aquatic center, which is important to note because that was a recommendation of the aquatic strategy. But when we asked the public specifically about the outdoor pool, the preference is for it to remain on site in a central location that is accessible for the majority of residents and provides a unique outdoor experience in a park-like setting. So I'm going to pass it over to Chris for an update on the repairs.
Thank you very much, Susie, and hello, everyone. So 2024, we did address some repairs required for regular operations. So works completed included routine repairs and also sand filter medium replacement, which is not an annual requirement. Also required repairs as a result of condition assessments, so those are still ongoing. So we're currently updating pool operations documentation. We're reviewing needs for mechanical and safety work around the main drain. We believe we have that completed now. We're assessing potential for flow control on the recirculation pump to control flow rates. And then unfortunately, yes, the wading pool was closed. So we're still reviewing how best to advance that. Outdoor pool options and feasibility analysis currently is in progress. So the plan is to pick that up immediately and hopefully finish in early next year. Okay, and yeah, so the plan for 2025. Complete the options analysis, present to council for decision regarding future of the pool. Recommendations will identify costs and life cycles for renewal versus repair of the pool, pardon me. We'll initiate detailed design, estimated to cost $250,000. So that will select a facility, that'll be based on the selected facility option. Then we'll report back to environmental regulators, as we said we would. So we'll complete any further needed works to support ongoing operation of the pool. So regular operations with continued risks of emergency, unplanned repairs and shutdowns. The older the pool gets, the harder it will be to keep going, unfortunately. Long-term plans, 2026 and beyond, likely looking at a temporary closure for repair or renewal. This will be dependent on council's direction. So estimated budgets range from 1.25 million for repairs up to 18 million for a completely new pool. This will be pending council direction. And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Great. Thanks for the presentation to both of you. I'm just going to remind the commission that we're on a pretty tight timeline today. So just want to ask everyone to try and keep their questions concise, and we'll get through the agenda. Director Grieve.
Oh, I was just going to do a big dissertation of growing up here and Herb Bradley and swimming in the pool before they had heat, but I'll let all that go. I'm just wondering, why can't we just phone bath fitters and get them to come in and fit it?
There's a little more required than that, I would say. Thank you for the question, though.
Director Brown.
I won't go on about my swimming lessons there either. I am curious though about the actual state of the pool. Is there a report that is available on the website or something that I could look at to catch up? Because I'm not aware of that, how bad it is. Or how good it is, or however we want to frame that.
You want to take that one? Or do you want me to? Excellent question. Thank you very much. There's no publicly available report at this time. We are still piecing together a series of reports. The more we look, the more we find. So we're still very much on a learning journey with the pool, and we're hoping to have some concise answers very soon.
Thanks for that. And Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering if you could briefly explain from an engineering perspective why it costs $250,000 to do a detailed design?
Yes, excellent question. Thank you very much. So that very much is a placeholder dependent on the direction we receive from council pending the results of the options analysis. So obviously, detailed design for remediation is going to be much less than detailed design for a completely new facility. So this is our best guess. That sort of covers both bases for now. General guidelines for detailed design are about 10% of total capital construction. We've taken that into consideration, and so we've put forward the numbers we have based on that analysis.
Great. I don't see any other lights on. So I just want to thank you both for coming and providing the context and around both the grant applications that are coming in the upcoming budget. I think it's very helpful for us as a board to understand where those funding requests are meant for. And with that, we'll move on to our next report. We have a follow-up around the Lush Valley delegation from our last meeting, and I think it's just a verbal update from staff, so I'll pass it over.
Thanks, Chair. Jennifer Zabinden is able to provide a quick update on the delegation follow-up. Jennifer is our Senior Manager of Recreation Facilities. Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon through to the chair. Staff are currently working with Lush Valley Foods, and where we're currently at is getting the water irrigation updated and the fencing updated. Unfortunately, due to the weather, things have been delayed a touch, but we're hopeful to be able to move forth in the next couple of weeks on that. And the other thing that staff have been working on is looking at ways to do joint partnership programming, and that you'll start to see it come to fruition in the spring when the sunny weather's back.
Great, thanks for that update. I'll just ask the board if there's any questions around that. And seeing none, I didn't take a motion for receipt on that, so we can just move right along. Thanks for that, Jennifer. The next item we have is the resolution status report. Moved by Hillian, seconded by Grieve. Any discussion or questions on the report? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed to receipt? And that's carried. And moving into our reports, recreation grants, process improvements. Moved by Hillian, seconded by Grieve, and I'll pass this over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. We have a bit of a tag team here. So Doug DeMarzo is our General Manager of Community Services, and Lucy Wacharek is our Chief Financial Officer. And I think, Lucy, you're going to lead into the presentation here, and then you've got your staff here to support any questions that might come up. So, Lucy, over to you.
Thank you. Through the CAO and the chair to the directors. Yes, Doug and I will take you through a short presentation on this item. Okay, that's great. So there's been a joint collaboration between community services and financial services, and staff are here before you today to propose updates to the annual allocation process for recreation grants. As directors are aware, the CVRD allows for the distribution of community grants through multiple services. There are many kinds of grants accessed through grant programs. Some grants are operational in need, some for capital, others are associated with specific programs, projects, or events. Currently, the process for accessing and administrating these grants varies, and staff recognize opportunity for improvements and efficiencies. The proposed process update being introduced today is one component under the CVRD grant program. The improvement is being considered under the strategic work currently underway by staff to develop a framework for community grants and partnership. In our work plans for 2024 is an initiative to review and update systems and processes related to grant distributions to the community. This work looks to make improvements to these 4 areas: improve equity and transparency, better align to the budget process, mitigate risk, streamline and improve accountability, and finally incorporate better overall communication. So to date, improvements have been implemented, including the onboarding of the new process for rural communities grants and multiple administrative processes. The contributions to community recreation programs distributed under Service 600 are categorized into the following groups: those grants that are application-based, those grants that are directly awarded and approved through your budget process, and those distributed to municipalities. The staff report includes details related to the 2024 approved grants and transfers to other local governments, as well as some historical data related to tax requisitions and grant payoffs. For 2024, and just generally speaking, the fund distributes through annual application is about 30,000. Those directly layered in the budget, that'll vary from year to year. And in 2024, this is 225,000. This also includes a one-time carry forward for the $115,000 grant to the Comox Valley United Soccer. And in 2024, 601,500 is approved for distribution to municipalities. The proposed process change only relates to application-based and direct award categories. We are not going to talk about the municipalities, as these are addressed through multi-year contracts. The updated process brings the following notable changes. Under the goal of equity and transparency, better awareness will be sought so that community groups are aware of the grant funding opportunity. The website will clearly lay out application process and give the relevant details. Application questions have been aligned with typical evaluation type criteria. And this, along with the potential for a formalized preliminary assessment, can help directors with allocating funding. For grants less than $30,000, the process has been maintained as simple as possible. And for those times when grants exceed $30,000, requirements for greater scrutiny will be employed. And this may include specific grant agreements, maybe progress reports, depending on the situation, final reviewing, and a review conducted by financial services of the project program of those results, just to have a look to see what kind of value for tax dollars has been received. So secondly, better alignment to the budget process comes with changes in the application deadlines. The current application deadline in the current process, that application deadline is March 1st of the granting year. So staff are proposing this be changed to October 15th of the year before. In the current process, in your proposed budget, there is an estimate that's based on the prior year's application. And with those applications coming in that October timeframe, that'll just better inform your proposed budget. And the allocation process generally would take place in about mid-year of that year where the grants were going out. So what we're proposing is that occurs early in the year and before March 31st, and that just will allow us to get the grant payments out earlier as well. The application form has been revamped and now also acts as a simple contract. So by signing it, the applicant agrees to use the grant as they have specified, and this enhances accountability. The payments, as I was saying, will be made earlier in the year after the allocations have been done by the board, and the budget is adopted by the CVRD board. So basically that March 31st. Community groups will be required to provide a short report on how the funds were used and the resulting benefits. And lastly, we are noting 3 specific ways in which we feel communication overall will be improved. Applications will be acknowledged when they come in, as well when the application is either approved or denied, or information will go back out. And we did create a dedicated email and just felt that this would help to just alleviate those times when potentially information has been sent to the CVRD and it hasn't been received, or potentially it's gone to the wrong place. So we think that's really helped. This is a slide representing the flow chart of major steps, and I'm not going to address every box. And I just wanted to highlight a couple more things with this diagram, just in hopes that it might just help you bring a few things together on how this new process will work. The application will be received by October 15th. As I said, acknowledgement of the application. The potential exists for staff to conduct a preliminary assessment of each of the applications, especially in times when grant programs are oversubscribed. This can be quite helpful to directors. The results of the scoring will be included with the application and will be posted to the director's correspondence site. The commission will conduct their allocation process and as typically done currently with a staff report at your table and links to the full applications. So once grants allocations are known, the award or denial letters will go out. The applicants will be asked to sign the award letter and provide us with EFT information, electronic fund transfer. And we will use technology to make this as easy and streamlined as possible. So once paperwork is back, finance will proceed with payment. And we're looking to have those payments out by May 30th. In our engagement we did do with some community groups, it says they welcome this change to be able to rely on those funds earlier in the year. And as mentioned, there is a requirement for community groups to report in on how the funds were used and how the event or program went. We're trying to keep this very simple. Many of these groups apply each year. And as part of the following year's application, that community group at that time can actually submit their little brief report in on how they use the funds that they got the previous year. And it will be clear that funds need to be used by October 15th of the subsequent year. So that's one thing that we didn't have in our existing process that we've added. The process used by Recreation Commission to allocate the grants will remain the same. It will be supported by improved information, we're hoping. So as is the case now, applications will be available. The potential for that scorecard exists and can be included with each of the applications. Staff report will continue to support the directors in their decision-making, including summary information and any other information that we feel may be pertinent to highlight for you as you go through your process. And just moving to next step, which Doug will speak to for you.
Thanks, Lucy. And through this process, it's trying to bring alignment with our other grant programs, including the rural community grants, with the types of dates and access to the websites and bringing up emails. I think it's just to summarize some of the stuff that Lucy's spoken about. I think it's important to note that the 2025 budget cycle for you will look much the same. You'll see the regulars in the proposed budget, and there'll be some unallocated amount set forth as you desire through that proposed conversations in January, February. And it's really targeting this at the 2026 budget cycle so we can work with our regular partners as well as make sure that there's more transparency and open it up to broader groups that are interested in delivering either recreation programs or in some cases improving their capital to deliver programming to our general public. So with that, we will basically move those groups under 30,000 into an application type process. So it's clear for them, it's laid out exact expectations. Where in the past, they've often just submitted a 4 or 5 year capital plan or an operations plan, and we've kind of moved that forward just through discussion with staff. So it'll be much clearer for them what to expect. And this will help as they have transitions in their own directors, and then nonprofits vary with different transition times and different transfer of knowledge. So it'll be very clear on our website to help them there. When we're seeing a major change, like you've just saw with the city of Courtenay coming here, if there's a major, through our preliminary review of the applications, a major change, we might recommend the delegations come in November at this time of the year to update the Rec Commission on whether it's a one-time capital goal or whether it's continuous operations or whether they're new to the rec grant piece. So that's where you might see the delegations coming ahead of that proposed budget, which will help inform your discussions along the way. So really the rest of it's about that allocation approval process. And then obviously the website being a single portal that includes all our grant operations as well as an email. So if on the staff side of things, the communication's a lot clearer, everything goes to one kind of grant email. That'll also help anyone applying for the grants. So last off here, just before I get to this slide, if this is out of cycle or if you're not thinking this is the way you want to move forward, we do think there's time for you to reconsider this in June, perhaps as your strategic planning session, if what you're hearing here is not in line with how you think the grant system should work for Rec Commission. But our recommendation today is to kind of endorse this proposed process and move towards this application-based cycle for grants, especially under the 30,000, and then likely into some sort of grant agreement contract basis for grants over 30,000 with additional responsibilities on reporting like Lucy's alluded to. Other operations is just to leave it as is, it kind of works. to some extent, but I think it would work better for everybody with what we're recommending today. Or just request further information to support that June meeting, or perhaps earlier if you want to report back to the commission. That's kind of where we're at today, and I'll leave it open to any questions. I know some of this might seem familiar to the EASC as we've gone through community grants and arts and culture conversations with them, and some of this might be new to you. So we're happy to answer any questions you may want to have.
Great, thanks for the report. Really well laid out. I'll open it up to questions. I see Director Grief has a slide on first, I believe. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My question, a couple of questions actually. So the applications, because we're gonna sort of jump ahead this year to the applications being due in October. When does the applications for 25 open, and when do they close?
Yeah, so they've been open, and typically the regular applicants we have usually submit by November. So we're in the process of reaching out to those that we haven't seen yet. So there's definitely a transition period and grace period. And we're trying to get the applications in place for proposed budget that you'll see, I guess at the end of December or January, whenever it's released. So we're proactively reaching out to those who have received rec grant before right now as we speak, so.
Yeah, I ask, and also, I think that it's very welcome that, first of all, there's a carry forward, so you answered my question there. And, but when you have unsuccessful applications, rather than just a letter, do we actually guide them as to how to make a successful application? Is there a follow-up on that? Because you know, sometimes with the province, they just say no and you don't know why, right?
Yeah,
Just
so
wondering, do we have a follow-up for the smaller groups?
yeah, we often, if they're going to be unsuccessful, we'll often communicate with them even before. You'll see it at the rec commission table, but if not, then there's usually a reason that they're outside the scope of the grant, or if the rec commission just decides the funding is not there, then we'll have to communicate that to them at that time. So any letter we send out always provides that avenue for, for contacting staff. And often we'll summarize some of the comments we may have heard in a rec commission or other grant type meeting to say this is the general direction and why you maybe weren't funded this time. Please reach out to us if you have any questions.
And if I could have just one more, thank you. So looking at a total budget of $857,000 odd dollars, what is the maximum requisition for this service? And how long has it been since we gave the 5-year bump?
I feel like it's almost double that, but that's, Lucy will look for that.
No, I'll just keep talking because the reason I'm asking is that we've experienced some really big inflationary pressures out there. And a lot of groups are feeling the pinch. Obviously, you know, when I look at the CVEX and their 10 grand, we've increased the site rental costs. The porta potties came in at $10,000 almost this year. So you see a lot of the festivals and stuff. I mean, they're really, it's really mounting up, and you can only absorb so much of that. So I'm hoping that we have some discretionary discussion around that, and we're just curious about the about bumping the service, or how close are we to reaching the ceiling?
I still don't have your max rec up, but I'll look that up. But as your budget, oh here, Kelly, 1 second. She's quicker at getting it for me. It's $1 million.
1.4.
It's $1 million, okay.
Oh, 1.4 million. That's
1.4
right.
is significant.
Thank you.
So yeah, because like I say, over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been tremendous increase in everything. I mean,
yeah, we do. You know, there's that potential that, you know, it's going to be over prescribed. So I guess it was another place where, as we align it with the budget process, we can bring that forward to you as you're considering your budget. And if you want to be raising the requisition in order to cover some certain need, then it's there as you are considering everything else in your budget as well.
I just also had the outdoor pool, which some of the service was originally
Yeah, I see
intended
that.
for, is a big cost driver in that budget. So
Right.
there'll be further conversations once City of Courtney staff is able.
I
to
look
provide
forward to more
information.
conversation of budget, I guess, on this. Thank you.
Thanks for those questions, and I'll pass it over to Director Brown.
Thanks, and thanks so much for this report. I think the challenge with granting programs is aligning the improved accountability and risk mitigation with accessibility of the grant process. And I think, you've done a really good job with that. So I appreciate that. There's one question that I don't understand, and I don't know how I would answer it if I was applying for grants. It says what areas your organization belongs to. Is that like where you would be operating, or is that like where your office is, or what does that mean?
Yeah, I think that would be what area you're applying from, like what area are you serving? And if you're like
Okay, so we might-
particularly just serving Village of Cumberland programming, then you'd put Village of Cumberland, so.
Okay.
Or lots of them just put all of the CBRD. Yeah.
Okay, so we might need some clarification on that wording, so people don't confuse themselves.
Thank you for that.
Director Jollycrow.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just as a follow-up to Director Greaves' comments, and in preparation for our budget considerations, is that something that is planned to be brought forward from our finance team? Is a historical look at applications received and the total, if there was oversubscription to the granting program? That's something that we can consider in the budgetary process if that's possible.
Yeah, we haven't had prescribed grants in the past that have ever exceeded our max rec, but with that $1.2 million ask in 2026, potentially you're gonna definitely see that. So we usually bring the previous year's numbers in the table in the PowerPoint. So if you're wanting more than that, we can look into that maybe.
Yeah, we certainly can. And I just, in the report, we've gone back to 2019. You just get a little bit of a sense in those couple of groups of what because I think it's important to break out the different types in this service for sure. So what the support provided to something like the outdoor pool, for example, is a whole different thing than a bucket of dollars to provide out to different community groups. Yep. But we can, there's this info, and certainly we'll keep that in mind as we bring your proposed budget, just to make sure that that's there for your consideration.
Thanks for that question. Yeah, I had a question just on the change of process. I think it makes a lot of sense to move this up because then we'll have certainty around what we need to requisition in advance of the budget. But this service has been used a few times to answer an emerging community need, and it's provided us with some flexibility. There's a couple examples in the report, one being the cricket, and the other was the regional sports field policy was funded from this, and we are able to meet that because there is some flexibility built in. Moving the grant process up allows us to be pretty certain about what our fixed or like what those costs are going to be, but would we still have some flexibility built into the process for these emerging things that happen to come up from time to time?
I could speak to that a bit. We have a reserve fund in this, so there's that potential to do a budget amendment in the year. Lucy and I have discussed still presenting an unallocated amount in the proposed budgets and then in the recommended budgets if the rec commission isn't. That's because sometimes we do have smaller emerging needs come throughout the year of different rec groups and all of a sudden have a tournament or a festival or something along those lines. So that would be at the board's discretion or rec commission's discretion. So on how much they feel that an allocated amount would be after they see the asks. And if it doesn't get spent, which some years it doesn't, it just simply gets carried forward. And so it's fine.
And then one other point of clarity was in the spend, we issue the payment in May, and then it said in October of the following year. Do we mean it within 6 months, not in 18 months for the spend? Is that correct?
We actually were giving them till 18 months.
Oh, 18 months. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad I clarified that. I interpreted it the other way around.
Can I clarify that with Tina for 1 minute? Sorry, I'm just
Okay.
It's the following October. So sorry. I'm so sorry. Mhm.
Could you repeat the
Yeah,
answer into
I
the
will.
mic? Thanks.
Yeah. To clarify, and sorry, Chair, that the community groups are being asked to spend the dollars by October of that year.
Okay,
Okay?
great, thank you.
Mhm.
And I'll pass it back to Director Brown.
Thanks. I forgot one of my questions. So through the new application process, would all of the questions that are asked in there come to the commission when we make a decision, or is staff shortening it and filtering a bit for us? What does that look like?
To the chair, the full applications will come to this table.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing no other lights on, I'll dispense with receipt. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And could I get a motion on the recommendation? And any further discussion on that? Seeing none, any opposed to the recommendation? And that's carried unanimously. Moving right along. And that's a motion for receipt from Director Grieve, and I need a second, Director Grant. And I'll pass this over to staff.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And Dr. Marza will also be introducing this report on the amenity cost charges for recreation infrastructure. Doug, over to you.
Thank you. Through the Rec Commission, this is about amenity cost charges, primarily with the Comox Valley Track and Field Service and the Comox Valley Recreation Complexes. So really what this is building on is your 20-year capital plan, recognizing there will be growth in the community. To help fund this growth, the provincial government has added a new tool for recreation infrastructure called amenity cost charges. This tool can collect funds for amenities such as community centers or recreation centers. And it's really based on new development that results in increased population. Collection of ACCs from development is similar to the development cost charges that you may be familiar with in each of your communities in the past. Unfortunately, recreation infrastructure was never part of those original calculations due to provincial guidelines and restrictions. So a few key points is ACCs can only fund new capital costs. And there are a lot of exemptions, which include new supportive housing, nonprofit cooperative housing, or other forms of publicly funded housing. Those units would be exempt from any additional cost charges. And I'm sure many of your communities you've talked about density bonus conversations and other types of conversations that happen through either rezonings or subdivisions. One thing here at the ACCs is there's no double charging. So it really streamlines and clarifies that conversation for those conversations you may be having. At the regional district, we do the same with our rezoning and subdivision. So why are we here? We're really here to present something new based on the simple concept of growth should help pay for growth. The province has recognized this by formalizing and creating the ACCs. And for not only rec services, but other important community core services they're delivering to your citizens. So those are types of amenities that provide social, cultural, heritage, recreational, or environmental benefits to a growing community. In Appendix A, I don't want to dive into it too much, but there is a good chart near the end that describes the DCCs and ACCs as kind of a comparison. So I realized I was pushing the wrong button here, so I'll catch you guys up on the presentation. So where are we at in the process? Really, we're just here to discuss whether this is something the Rec Commission is interested in. We're really initiating this process by presenting this report and asking if you want further work done on this subject. And if so, it's really about building on that rec strategic plan you've seen in recent years, and more so the housing landscape in the CVRD is obviously ever evolving, but a continuous trend seems to emerge where we can expect growth through to 2043. And this is based on the housing needs reports that you've seen recently in this fall. So consultation moving forward here is really about requiring is a requirement of this, and is really about these guidelines being presented to the community and developers alike if we just choose to go forward. And during the preparation of the bylaw, you know, if we get to that stage, there would be in-stream protection as well for other developers that were already in stream. And one interesting note here is this is really a decision of the rec commission and the board. Unlike DCC's, provincial inspector approval is not required. So to summarize, we're kind of here at the initial part of this process, or if we choose to go further, we'll bring back background study to evaluate options, discuss that with you again. We'll move out to seeking consultation and then eventually preparing and adopting a bylaw, which is at your discretion as opposed to the provincial discretion. And in the staff report, it looks at a number of pieces of what it could include. So as we know from our strategic plan, we're looking at investment into major recreation structures. And these include what you're probably pretty familiar with, that second artificial turf field, the third arena, the pool addition, potentially repurposing the sports center pools, kind of what we've outlined in our methodology. Of course, there's been many other asks by the community, including pickleball complexes, baseball complexes, improved field houses, supporting amenities for those fields. Weight room expansions have been brought forward a number of times throughout the years. There's many reports, and a lot of this leads to the known fact that our communities are growing and we're starting to see those stresses on our recreation facilities. So either way, this region is going to grow. So it's about how we're going to drive and meet the community needs and what tools are available to this. And ACCs is one of those tools. Again, so what does the background report consider as we move forward? Diving into this a little deeper. It looks to confirm the housing needs report as your main vehicle to understand the population projections, which then would look at your ACC calculations. It reconfirmed what projects you want to be eligible and if you want to consider exemptions beyond what the province has considered as exemptions. We confirmed the collection method and some of those pieces there. So for example, currently you can collect a building permit, although this does cause some issues from a regional perspective, as Denman and Hornby Island don't necessarily have the building permit purview. So we have to look into that a little deeper and determine how that's going to be collected, at what stage of development it gets collected, and who collects and transfers those monies. And then finally is really about confirming what those cost calculations are. A key piece to this is they have to be reasonable. You can't necessarily charge everything to that. You have to put that framework picture on to keep housing affordable, to drive your housing initiatives as well. So in general, one of the things that the guidelines do say is local governments are expected to provide some financial assistance to ensure that the new development does not shoulder the entire costs of the amenities. And this is commonly referred to as the assist factor. So in the past, you could shoulder maybe the entire burden through DCCs or something under the new development. The province has been pretty specific here that there is a role of this assist factor, and you should really take that seriously when considering this if we move it forward in these calculations. And finally, here we are with our closing kind of piece, is to complete that background study with the consultants based on the Appendix B methodology that you see there. And furthermore, work with seek municipal council support to support their staff to work with the CVRD to coordinate an equitable approach to ACCs if any municipalities are considering them. And also does that dive into the DCC calculation to make sure the charges aren't becoming too prohibitive to developers. So, you know, we all work in our own municipalities and electoral areas and deliver our own services. But when you start to add up all the numbers, you have to remain competitive with who you choose your competitors are to attract development, or which may be Campbell River, maybe as far south as Nanaimo. Either way, those are decisions that are made by developers, and you're going to want to make sure you're able to expand housing to meet the housing needs of your community to keep it affordable. So there's lots of pieces here to consider. And like I mentioned, we're just at this initial stage, not to discuss all those pieces necessarily. That's what we'd come back to you with. But really, do you want to go down this path of amenity cost charges? So with that, I think I can leave it to any questions you may have.
Thanks for that report. We have alternate director Jolicoeur first.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. In the Appendix B, which is really at the crux of the resolution, that the recommendation from staff, on the first page, it speaks to project eligibility. And so I guess I have a few questions on that, but first question of clarification: does the province require us to list explicitly the projects that are eligible for ACCs within a bylaw?
My understanding is, yes, you have to list your projects with the cost that's projected out in that 20 years. So again, your ACC bylaw has lots of flexibility that you can add projects and change your calculations any year through a bylaw process still, but there's flexibility built into it. But yeah, that's how you base your foundation of your charges, that also your developer's gonna wanna know, how did you come up with this number? So yeah.
Right, so at the time of the implementation of the bylaw, we would list projects and the estimated cost at that time for the project. And so in that first paragraph, the first section under project eligibility, yeah, I'm definitely in favor, obviously, of the three major strategic priorities for the commission, being the turf fields, the ice services, and the aquatic infrastructure. The second two sentences after that, I guess the way I'm interpreting the guide, the Appendix B methodology, is that you're recommending that we exclude community halls, recreation centers, dry floor space, community gathering spaces from the initial work to assess on whether they should be included in an ACC bylaw. Is that correct?
Yeah, at this stage, we're just, with this methodology, we're looking just at those three. And we're just bringing it to your attention that this is potentially, if we're going forward under this methodology, you would be excluding other findings that you may or may not have wanted. But I think we've gone through a very strong recreation strategic plan, which is really focused on these three. And we presented the capital plan, I don't know, last meeting in September. And it really remained focused on these three. And there's not a lot of room to be adding these other large type of venues in. And so if you're calculating for them without really thinking you were going to be able to deliver on them, maybe that's one way to go, but it will drive your ACC up. So for every large $1 million, multi-million-dollar project, it drives that ACC calculation up, because your number of units will basically remain stable based on your housing needs survey. So that's kind of why we're just recommending these three, but we're definitely open to additional ones, and in the future, maybe something consider as your needs develop.
Great. Yeah. I don't see any other microphones. Can I have another question, Chair? Unless there's
I
others.
actually have
Okay.
a kind of a follow-up on yours, and then I'll let you go again. Yeah, just on the project specific aspect, and not initially, but generally speaking, if we were looking at the replacement of some type of facility, like say the replacement of an ice rink or a turf field or a pool, does it need to be a facility expansion in order to meet the growth requirement?
Yeah, the way I read it is it would need to be a facility expansion. So if you were to add the 25 meters to your existing facility pool, and you wanted to upgrade your hot tubs and basically like for like and do a bunch of other work, you really only should be charging for that facility expansion piece to accommodate the new growth. Basically saying we have what we have, it's being paid for by the current citizens and not necessarily being driven by new growth. Whether we've, there's lots of arguments that we're behind or ahead, but that's the way you frame it.
Okay, thanks. And I can send it back to you, Director. No, we'll let you go, Director Grant, first time speaker. Go ahead, please.
All right, thanks. I was really looking forward to talking to you about bullet 4, and then it came up and it actually had what I was going to talk about. But I think it's important that we really have a lot of consultation with the municipalities, because we need to put amenity costs on our things as well. And there's only so much you can put on. And I know in the old days with DCCs, you guys kind of put your list together, we put our list together, and boom, that was the cost. But that can't work anymore, because there's a limit to how much you can charge on these things. Like the government has put a limit on what you can do. So we're really going to have to work closely with the RD to make sure that everybody gets a little bit of this, or what we can do. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all works out, because my thoughts on Bill 44 is that the idea is to A, house people, but B, to eventually start bringing the costs down, for people as you have more housing. Eventually it should start bringing the costs down, but this is actually going to help ramp it up. So I think it's really important that we have those proper discussions and get the numbers correct at the beginning.
Thanks for that comment, and alternate Director Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I just want to reiterate my support to staying really close with municipal staff on this. I know that at the city of Courtney, we've just prioritized this work for the next year. So the ACC bylaw, that is. So looking forward to hearing how our teams can work closely together. I guess just going back to the comments that I was making around the project eligibility and the logic that's provided here in the methodology appendix B. And I think that we've had some conversation and we've just heard from the city of Courtney staff around some of the data that we have around regional access to city of Courtney recreational facilities. And so, yeah, I'm not entirely sure that, because my understanding, this is just really to give you direction to go work with the consultant to bring back a report. And I guess I would be more in favor of seeing what the potential could be for the inclusion of these other options, community halls, rec centers, and dry floor space and community gathering spaces. And arguably I'm still new, 2 years on the commission, and I haven't seen much of these facilities come forward other than in some of the electoral areas for support. But I'd be curious to know, because it does allude on page 1 that there are other ACC bylaw processes that could potentially fund these other facilities. So I'm wondering if staff can speak to what you're thinking for that.
Yeah, I think what we're thinking is some of those other ones like dry floor space might be better situated within one of the municipal community rec programs. So in that sense, the way I kind of envision it is if you have the decision making and budget authority over that particular investment, that's where you should be focusing your ACCs. So if you wanted to get into the dry floor space, which we may through the potential closure of the sports center pool, but given the growth in the community, we may need that pool still. But anyway, lots of stuff to come there. Then that would be a decision at the rec commission time that you want to invest in that type of facility for the region as opposed to for a specific municipality. And then you could create or update your ACC bylaw to allow that into the calculations. You go through your year period for developers in stream, and then you'd add it to the new developments coming forward. So it's really thinking about it in that context. And I know where you're going with the outdoor pool conversation, but again, this rec commission doesn't have the decision authority over that pool. You only have, or you're only being requested for budgets. You don't even have decision authority whether you can charge to close that pool, whether you can charge fees. You have no fees in charge bylaw. It's really a city Courtney decision. So that pool we'd have to have that conversation with city Courtney staff, but in its current context, I'd be reluctant to add it to a regional ACC for that kind of reason. But those conversations are what we need to have, with staff.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And we'll go to Director Arbor online.
Yeah, thanks you. I guess you're just seeking feedback today, so I'm not very enthralled, I guess, about studying an ACC program for the Rec Commission. I do have questions around how it could potentially affect projects in the South, and so similar comments as Director Grant. I would much rather see the Commission maybe focus on sponsorships or something like that. We see a lot of jurisdictions heading that way in recreation, rather than always downloading onto. Amenity is sort of a form of property tax in a way for new buildings and new amenities. So so I'm not very excited by this proposal. Thank you.
Thanks for that comment. I don't see any other questions. I'll put in my 2 cents. We, as a rec commission, have created a pretty ambitious and expensive capital plan in the years ahead, and the province has handed a tool to local governments to help fund capital projects in recreation. It's something we didn't have before. So regardless of what way we decide to go on this, I think we definitely have a duty to explore the possibility and understand it better. So I am certainly supportive of what staff's come forward with here. One question I did have just around the coordination at the council level, because as Director Grant pointed out, this work is also going to be happening at municipal government level with other projects that qualify under this new ACC charges program. At what point in that, I think it was maybe slide 3, you kind of had the steps lined up. Where would the touch points be with the municipalities? Would it be multiple places along that graph, or is there one specific point in this process where we would come together and find like
Yeah, I
some
think
agreement on the path forward?
exactly. So the key is to evaluate your options. We'd be seeking that the councils ask their staff to work with us and really look at what that means specific to our ACCs here, but also if they're contemplating ACCs, that would then come into the conversation. And when we bring that back to seek a little bit more direction, maybe before we're out to the broader consultation, we'll have those conversations and what that looks like. Bring that back for rec commission direction. And then if necessary, we're back at that table with the municipal partners saying, you know, one of us or some of us or all of us are too high or too low. And let's get back and sit down before we take this out to the public in a broader piece. So I think it's right off the top to make sure we're not back to the point of overcharging and making development more difficult here.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. And I suppose then a limiting factor here may just be where the municipalities are at in this process as well. Because if we're all gonna try and move through this in some kind of unified fashion, some municipal governments may be further into that process than others. So in terms of timeline for when this would come back, have we considered when that might be?
Yeah, based on the recommendation of seeking other council's direction, it's impossible for me to say. Like, could be a year out. I'd be surprised if we were back. You know, I'd hope to be back to the rec commission maybe by September with that third step, kind of evaluating it. But it really depends on the other communities and what attention they want to give to the conversation. It could, you know, this isn't something you really want to rush. In that sense, you kind of want to, we're a small region and we want to bring everyone forward together with this new tool. The good thing is, as you've alluded, is speaking with my recreation colleagues, is no one's really out the door yet. And some haven't even thought about it yet. So it's going to be a process. And yeah, hence the no timelines, unfortunately. It's just, do you want us to initiate and do this? And if so, here's some guidelines and here's where we're at.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty realistic, given that it's a new program and a new process and there's multiple jurisdictions that need to come together. So that makes perfect sense to me. So thanks for that explanation. Seeing no other lights on, I'll dispense with receipt. Is there anyone opposed to receipt? Seeing none, that's carried. Moved by Hillian, seconded by Moran. Any discussion on the recommendation? Director Grieve.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would suggest and finally that also include the Electoral Area Services Committee, because I think we need to bring this discussion to our table as well.
Yeah, thanks for that amendment. And do we need to vote on that, or is that just a minor amendment because that was moved already?
You can accept it as a minor amendment. If there's no objection to that, then that would be part of the, yeah, and finally the Electoral Area Services Committee would also be included.
Okay, yeah, I'll consider that a minor amendment unless anyone's opposed. Great, and is there any other comments or discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed to the recommendation?
One opposed, thanks.
All right, Director Arbor opposed and all other members in favor, and that's carried. Moved by Hillian, seconded by Grieve. I'll assume everyone's in favor. Thanks, everyone.